All right, Mike DiCorsi is a legendary scribe with the Sporting News. He's also a big basketball head on Fox Sports and the Big Ten Network. And he's also on Coast to Coast every week. Thank God for that. Mike, good to see you. I was in Pittsburgh for the debacle on Saturday night in the 5-degree weather. And I said to the audience earlier, the only thing good about my night was going to the Capitol Grill for a $1,000 dinner before the game. I thought that the Steelers looked awful, and they have looked awful now for a month straight. And, I mean, they are finished. And I can't even describe it. They are done.
Here's where I'll disagree with you. I don't believe that Saturday night's performance was at all connected or similar to the games against the Eagles and the Ravens. They were in the Eagles game until Najee Harris fumbled. If Najee Harris doesn't fumble, the score goes likely to minimum 21-17 and possibly 21-21. I don't remember the exact point, but at some point in the third quarter. In the Ravens game, they were actually on the way to taking a 14-7 lead if only Russell Wilson doesn't decide to try to be a hero and tries to take on a defensive back and winds up fumbling the football basically at the goal line. So instead of a 14-7 lead, they wind up in a hole. So those were performances that were against exceptional competition, and they failed because they are the team that has to rely on you turning the football over and them not. And in those two occasions, they turned it over in significant. There was a pick six as well in that Baltimore game. So that's the fundamental truth about those two games. Kansas City was a mess. Kansas City's way better than the Steelers are on any day, let alone Christmas Day with an hour and a half worth of rest. But then the Cincinnati game was an entity unto itself. It was a complete debacle from the offensive side of the football. The coaching staff seemed to have no interest at all in opening the playbook beyond page one. It felt to me, as I got through this, I'm watching it and I'm trying to figure out, what are they doing? What are they trying to do? And Scott, there came a point in the game where it felt like it was an exhibition game. And they don't want to show anything to week one opponent or week two opponent. That's what it felt like. They had 11 first down plays to take that were not part of the end of the first half 2-minute warning or the attempt to come back from more than 2 scores down in the fourth quarter. 11. And on those plays, they ran the ball 11 times. You can't win like that in the NFL unless you're gaining 15, 20 yards on every one of those. And out of those 11 plays, Scott, 8 of them went for fewer than 5 yards and 7 went for fewer than 4. So they weren't going anywhere. It wasn't like, this is working, let's keep doing it. It was, this is failing every time and let's keep doing it because we're going to control the football. Well, you don't control the football if you don't move it. They make you give it up eventually.
They suck. Okay?
But they is a strong... No, they is much too encompassing because they went against the best offensive unit in football with Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase, and they didn't allow – they allowed 1 touchdown on the opening drive, and then they controlled the game at that end. Where they failed miserably is on the offensive end. Now, if George Pickens is dropping everything that's thrown to him, which he literally did, save for 1 sideline pass on the opening drive, if he's doing that, I can't say they're going to move the football successfully against anybody. But when they play the game the way they can and have, they're a challenge for anybody to beat. And they decided against the Bengals, and maybe it was the weather, but the weather, if it's not working, Scott, you can't keep doing the same thing. There's just no way that's defensible. And Tomlin tried to defend it by saying that, well, it's a lower risk proposition. But again, if you are getting less than 3 yards or less on every first down play, you are not moving the football. And if you're not moving the football, you're not possessing the football. And so in that part of the game against the Bengals, they failed miserably. They were badly outpossessed by the Bengals, who chose, look, we're not running against these guys. We can move the football in the air. And they did. They just couldn't complete drives against the Steelers defense.
So you wrote about the Eagles resting Saquon Barkley. You think it'll pay off on Sunday afternoon?
I do. I think that was the right move. I think he needed to be rested, healthy, and ready to go. And that record, to me, really didn't mean anything, Scott, because if you're getting an extra game to break it, what does it really matter? And this is football. You were a kid in Pittsburgh in the 70s and early 80s, as was I. And we didn't worry about numbers in terms of football. I mean, we all knew 7-14 and 41-92 and all 41-91 and all those kinds of numbers. But nobody paid attention to football records other than how many Super Bowls and championships you won. Right. So for Saquon to get that record, it really wouldn't have meant anything. He's one of, I believe now, 9 guys. I think there were 8 before him that gained 2,000 yards in a season. That's a number we'll respect forever. It's a very short list. It's not always a distinguished list because one of the guys on it was O.J. Simpson, but it's a very short list of NFL greats that have gotten 2,000 yards in a season, and Saquon's a part of that now.
So those number ones, Kansas City and Detroit, how advantageous is it for them to have the week off?
I believe it's significant because every NFL game is difficult now. The talent is more balanced than ever for the most part, except at the pivotal position of quarterback. And so for Kansas City to have the rest, to get a little bit healthier, Detroit, I don't know how many of the many players they have that are injured will have a chance to get back because they've got that week of rest. But I think any team that wants to win a Super Bowl better be pretty close to healthy. So whatever break they can get to get back more of their guys is significant. They showed a lot in that game on Sunday night against Minnesota to be able to dominate that game in the condition they're in. I thought that was pretty extraordinary. I still don't trust the coaching staff to make the right decisions if they get to a critical situation where it's a 4th and short and the right play is to punt or kick a field goal. I still don't trust that'll happen, so I'm a little bit guarded about my optimism for the Lions getting to the Super Bowl. But they showed they're an extraordinary team in that performance.
So college basketball. Last year, St. John's didn't make the tournament. From what you've seen of them so far and what Pitino has, does that end and they make it this year?
I think they'll make it, but there's no guarantee. The Big East did not have a great non-conference. So the number of bids that will be available to the league will probably be pretty limited. So you're going to have to finish in the top 3 or 4 of the league to feel good about having a chance. I think they certainly can. They showed a little bit of struggle early on trying to sort of adapt to Pitino's demands, to alignment situations. They brought in 2 point guards and weren't really sure whether to play them together or how it would work. I think they're starting to figure that out a little bit better and starting to perform better. But you got to watch if you're St. John's right now, you got to watch for Creighton. Creighton can get a lot better in a hurry. They struggled early on, but they're still dangerous. Xavier, Zach Fremantle back, they can get dangerous, as well as Villanova, which is starting to play better. All those teams can take a run at one of the 3 or 4 bids that likely will be available to the Big East.
What do you think of Pitt tonight, getting 14.5 at Duke? They're both 12-2.
Yeah, I think that the key for Duke here is they know they only get so many quad 1 opportunities. To get Pitt at home, I don't think they'll mess around with this at all. I think they'll go right after it. I think that whether they can cover, that's a big number.